most important respect for those people who have made and are still making invaluable contribution towards the promotion and preservation of art and culture, with emphasis on Indian art and culture in Trinidad and Tobago in the different disciplines.
And thank you for those wonderful comments, and that is what this program is about, bringing things out or looking outside the box from where it is practiced and deconstructing it from different perspectives so we get to understand it better and give it a more modern reinterpretation. So tell us a little bit about your foray in dance within Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, I have been involved in Indian dancing for over 60 years. That's a long time. It is completely different today from what it was 40, 50, 60 years ago, which I think you'll be very interested in because you have a special love for the folk aspect of it and that traditional aspect, which was brought to this country with, during that period with our indentureship period. But when we talk about Indian dance, Doug, first I'm very, very happy about this interview and you interviewing me about dance, because I thought that we would just allow the Bollywood to take over and that would be it. And that would be a sad thing, very sad. First, I would like to let our listeners to know, especially the younger generation who are involved in Indian dancing, that Indian dancing is not merely an art, nor simply a spontaneous expression of joy and harmony with nature. It is all these and much, much more. It is an expression of the philosophy of the people, the life and the country. And that is why it is so closely associated with religious beliefs and practices. So that is Indian dancing in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. Now, to continue along that line, you have different styles and forms of Indian dancing, which I know you'll be interested in. But the majority, 99.9% of our local dancers or young dancers are imitating the film industry. Mm-hmm. And absolutely nothing is wrong with that. That is only a reflection to show the kind of talent we have in this country without training. We are blessed with that natural inborn talent. And can you imagine, Doug, what will happen if those dancers were to go and take some basic training from people who were trained and qualified? But the film industry, again, I'm so happy about this, the film industry or the Bollywood style is in no way at all a representation of anything Indian or Oriental. In fact, it's an imitation of Europe and America and Michael Jackson. It's a highly motivated commerce. It's a business, like a grocery or factory or something like that. It has nothing to do with Indian art and culture. That's a serious business.
I just want to add in there where you speak about, because what you just said transcends not only dance, but it also transcends even to the singing of music in general. Because if you look at the Hindustani language, a lot of the people who perform Hindustani content or songs, in a Trinidad context, they don't understand Hindustani. So again, looking at where you said the dancer should now get formally trained, it goes to the same extent, formal training in singing, but also formal training in enunciation and pronunciation of the language. I just want to go back a bit because we spoke of the fact that Indian dance itself would have debuted or came to Trinidad during indentureship. Now, a lot of people know about Indian dance, and whenever you say Indian dance, the focus is on classical Indian dance. But within the context of indentureship, was that existent in that period?
Well, I am the person who is responsible for Indian dance in Trinidad and Tobago, because I'm the first person in this part of the world who was awarded a scholarship by the Indian government to go to India and study music and dance. But what we had before that was our local street theater, which we call the Harishchandra and the Gopi Chan and that kind of thing. And it was the only recreational outlet that our foreparents, the indentured laborers, had at that time. They had no stage, no lights, no choreographer, no microphone, anything like that. But they did it from the books.
Yeah.
And that existed for many. It was beautiful. You had men playing the role of women. It was beautiful, really a nice thing. Who could remember? But most of the people would have been dead and gone by now. And that over the period has changed. And you touch a very nice point, Doc, and it's a very serious point. Most of our singers in this country, they imitate the film industry to start with. Our local classical singers cannot speak Hindi, and I'm saying this with authority. They cannot speak Hindi or carry a conversation in Hindi. So again, because of the legacy that was left by the former singers, which they inherited today, and now performing in it. So they are blessed, because what was going to happen if it wasn't for that legacy, like, you know, the old classical singer. But you ask these fellas to explain that song and see what has happened. The pronunciation. And one bad pronunciation in a sentence can change the whole storyline. And I would like to suggest to them to do some basic Hindi. Simple as the word bhajan. You hear in bhajan, you hear in dolak, you hear in dantal, you hear in bhagwat. I mean, and you're wondering where are we going with that? And nobody is there to encourage or to assist and say, you know, if you were to take some basic training in Hindi, it would help you to pronounce this word so much better. How would you feel somebody pronouncing your name not properly?
I want to go, and I guess we need to go off topic a bit to look at the language of Hindustani within the performing arts. I go to Suriname often, and the Netherlands, where the language is still alive, Hindustani and Hindi.
Very much alive.
And the radio announcers there would do most of their programming, 80% in Hindi. What would you have to say for, we spoke of, okay, the dancer, we're now speaking about the singer, but now we even going into the radio announcer of Hindustani content. What is your opinion on what should be done? Because a lot of times I listen, because I understand and I speak Hindi. I would listen to the radio and the pronunciation of, just like you said, bhajan, and other words by the people of Indian origin themselves would mispronounce it.
Doc, you're touching a beautiful point there. And, you know, how do I explain this? This is a serious observation. You're saying there's an East Indian station,
Yeah.
or there's an Indian station. But nobody on that station speaks one word, not even one word of Hindi. They don't even say namaskar or sitaram. Aaj ka jai hai. Not one word they would say, but it's an East Indian station. So you calling this an East Indian station, but you're not opening your program with something live. It has to be a recording from India with a bhajan.
Right.
You see, even the word bhajan, you listen carefully to some of those on the radio station. The word bhajan is a problem. Their own names, their own names is pronounced very, very bad. And you keep wondering, where are we going? And if this is happening, what about the younger generation to follow? If the parents don't know, what happens to the children? And this is something I think our leaders in the temples, our leaders, our pundits can be able to assist very much with something like this. Let that be part of that session about the pronunciation of the things we do, katha, bhagwat, yagna, you know, bhajan, dholak, dhantal, pronounce people's name properly, you know.
But getting back to dance now, I remember doing research myself in dance. I looked at its expression during indentureship and then after indentureship, because a lot of the tutelage, I mean, like yourself, people who went on scholarship to get trained in Indian dance would have brought now the classical art form, which didn't really exist. But as a child, though, I remember they speaking about dances like the Jhadu dance the dance with the Harish Chandra, which the Nagara, I think, was the beat they would dance to back then. So just to educate our viewers on because this is a Bhoolal Parampara, essentially. So just to look back at that era from your professional knowledge in dance.
Yes, this is a beautiful. We go back to that again. At that particular time and era, the Jharu dance is not Indian dance. The Jharu dance could be considered folk.
Right.
And a lot of people held on to that word Jharu. Some can't say Jharu, they say Jaru. And you know, it means broom. And I remember I am probably one of the first because I'm from Penal.
Right.
And in Gopi Trace Penal, we had the Rahas Mandal dance group led by Sukhdev Ram Krishna. I'm talking over 60 years ago now. It was a long time. And we had the play with Radha and Krishna and the Gwalin and the Gopis and Yasodhara. And in that play, I used to play Krishna.
Right.
And then you had Radha, and Radha was played by a boy because you couldn't get a girl to come publicly to perform. A stigma was attached to that, which is so sad at that time. I think we're forgetting so many things in this world. And we had a play, and part of that play was the Jharu dance, where we would take the Jharu and put hungurus around the part of hole, and we would hit the Jharu, and we choreograph our own little choreography, nobody to really guide you in circles and line and hit, and we would sing and dance. People, you know, I remember they held on to that, and they started moving all over the country. It ended up in Best Village, and they call it Jharu, Jharu, Jharu. But it's just that you use the broom in your hand, so you say the Jharu dance. So if you had taken a chair, you would have called it the chair dance. So the dance didn't really call for any kind of basic training. It had a lot of rhythm in it and formation. Formation would mean circles and lines and squares while dancing, and you could sing and do it. Now I see it is in Best Village and a lot of people doing it. We also have the scarf dance, they call it scarf dance. Scarf is because you use a kerchief. And if I use a red kerchief, I will say Lal Romal. So you see, I remember starting that all these years ago with my own group. I have recordings of all of that. And this is what happened. But this is not even, I wouldn't call it folk. They enjoyed themselves in the play with Radha and Krishna. We used to go in wedding night and Ramayana and Bhagavad and these things and perform for the people in those days. And you get nothing for it. People just enjoy it. We enjoyed doing it, and that was the kind of thing happened. Then you had the other one with the folk dance we're talking about, and where the people would dress up like kings and queens, but they had storyline behind it. Beautiful storyline. They had one too with a lot of comedy. And girl, but how you looking so shocking? Your father working with tea and tech or what? You know, and that kind of thing. And people would laugh and enjoy it. But that was like a Saturday night in the wedding house to keep up the night, which we call it Batuan night and the cooking night. But all those people who used to do that, at that time they were speaking Hindi and speaking it properly. And I think they use it from a book. But we call it street theater. It was drama. It was drama. But the people who was involved in that kind of theater, they, you know, all gone. And nobody preserved it. Nobody at all preserved anything. So we had nothing to hold on to. In fact, I don't know if there's any recording or anything at that time because technology didn't exist at that time. It's like me, I dance all over the world, but I don't have anything of myself performing all over. So it's something like that.
One thing I want to find out though, because you spoke about, I always found this Jharu dance was similar to the Dandiya Ras.
It is the same.
Gujarat and the Radha Krishna. So it's essentially the same.
Identical same.
Okay.
Just that the people up in India would be more professional for choreography. While here we would do our own thing. When I did it from my own head at that time because there's nobody to guide, no school, no director, no choreographer, and that kind of thing.
Okay, so the discussion is definitely becoming very interesting. We looked at dance during the Indian leadership period. Join us. We are going on a short break. Join us shortly to continue this interesting conversation.
We all want to save money, without compromising on the best quality insurance coverage. If you are renewing your motor or homeowner insurances soon, then call us at Ekta Consultants. With over 27 years in the insurance industry, we can offer you significant savings on your insurance premiums. As agent for Guardian Group, we assure you the best quality coverage at a very competitive price. Email us at ektagroupmail@gmail.com.
Welcome back to this interesting discussion on dance. We spoke of dance during the indentureship period. Now I want to look post-indentureship and classical dance. Could you tell us a bit about the dance style that you would have learned and what you would have brought to Trinidad?
That's a nice question, Doc. A very nice question, especially for our young dancers, because we have a lot of young dancers who are very interested in Indian dancing. There are 8 different classical styles, 8. And it's time that they know about this and understand that. In Trinidad, we have 4. And the 4 is done by people who went to India and study and return. And the 4 we have in Trinidad, you have Kathak, you have Kuchipudi, you have Orisi, and you have Bharatanatyam. And these people, it's done by people, like I said, who went and studied. Like you have Satbal Karan Singh, you have Suzanne Mohip, you have Sandra Sukhdev, you have myself. I studied the style of Bharatanatyam. Or when I saw my very good friend Rajesh Sinath, he did Kuchipudi. So these people went, studied those different styles, and came back, and we are teaching it. I am the first person in this part of the world, like I said, who was awarded a scholarship to go to India and study and come back. And then other people followed as the years went by. But one of my observations is that the young people, the majority, is still imitating the film industry. And seriously, it is beautifully done and all of that. And I keep saying again, if they were to only go and take some basic training from those people who are trained, it would help them to make a better presentation, to even be a better teacher. Because nobody in the world, nobody in this world can read or write if they don't know the alphabet. And a house cannot be built on sand. And moving your neck like this and throwing your hand there and throwing your hair, that's not Indian dance. Because 9 out of 10 cases, you never know what they are doing because it's never announced. What is the dance you are doing? What is the name of the item? What is the meaning of the item? What tal or rag you are dancing in? The same thing with music. Music has dimensions. You have clarity, harmony, melody, and rhythm. And tell me, whenever you sit there in your house or your office, tell me where you get in those 4 dimensions. Nowadays, what is defined as music in our country. And this is so important. Classical will be classical. And even you go to a classical show, which is so nice, and we hope that this thing will forever be there. Look what is happening in there. It's a whole confusion of sound and put together because of acoustics. The drummer wants to hear himself. The singer wants to hear himself. The harmonium wants to hear himself. And the dantal wants to. And most of the time, look carefully, you'll see they tell the poor mic man, raise the drum, raise the drum, raise the drum. And this is my point. Where are we going? Where is the clarity, harmony, melody, and rhythm? Listen to any record in the world, and you can hear the voices.
Now, me, as a person who knows Hindi, one thing I try to do is do translations of the songs, especially those from the local classical tradition, the chutney tradition. And that's a problem I have, because when I listen to it, apart from sometimes I identify gross mispronunciation, sometimes it's an issue of the drum being too loud on the voice. So I have difficulty in trying to transcribe before I translate. But going back to these forms of dance mentioned, I think that one thing we spoke of even before this interview is that culture is always thought to be song and dance presentation, when we said that it's more than that. Just like you said, there are different elements or aspects to whatever profession we talk about. Looking at dance itself, I think that, as you rightfully said, not a lot is done via announcement before the presentation to tell of what it
The
is about,
educational part
the
of it,
style,
yes.
right? And I always thought and was interested because I do language within the Indian diasporic context. And one thing I realized is that each dialect or vernacular would come from a certain part in India. And once I thought, well, maybe dance could also be attributed to different parts.
Yeah.
So the 6 forms that you would have, or 8 forms, sorry, that you would have mentioned, how could we then attribute it to different geographical regions in India?
That's a nice one too. Each dance style has its own geographical and historical background. Each one, they're entirely different in music, in costume, and presentation. Orisi would come from Orissa. Bharatnatyam came from South India. Kathak is from North India. Kathakali is from Kerala, South India. Manipuri is from Manipur. So you see, this is the kind of thing. But when you're hooked with the Bollywood styling, God alone help us, nobody care about that.
Right.
But then we go and imitate it, and then say you're doing a Bharatnatyam. When the song is not Bharatnatyam, the costume is not Bharatnatyam, the movements is not Bharatnatyam. Some people would try to imitate 1 or 2 basic things and they call it Bharatnatyam. Then I wonder who are the people judging that.
Right.
It's like what's happening with the calypso, the pan or clap. You ask who are the judges? What is the qualification? What is the background? What is the CV? What is the experience? What is the reviews? Why it is in India with the little children, little champs and all the competition, you have a panel of judges and each judge make a comment. Why in Trinidad this is not happening? Think about that. That's the thing I would like our young people to understand. Why you sit there as a judge and a panel of 10 and 12, God alone know what is their qualification.
Exactly.
Why don't you stand and say something? So when you do that, you could then, so that if I don't correct you, what will happen in your future performance?
Because part of the judging process is not just simply to judge. It's about to even identify what your deficiencies and strengths are and then guide you to build on those deficiencies, if any at all.
So you're right, you're very correct there. Because this is a serious observation that I have been making for years now. A panel of judges, businessmen and doctors like yourself, and all kind of different people sit there. And I know they were never involved in singing, music, dancing, drama, painting, nothing, but you become a judge. What is the criteria used for you to be selected to be a judge when you don't know anything about the arts? And this has been happening for too long and far too long. I am saying that anytime people sit as a judge, you should stand up and make a comment.
Yeah, and even introduce yourself so that and what orientation you come from, because
That's right.
each judge would have a different strength or belong to a different profession within the art form itself.
That's right. So, but if you perform and I don't correct you or I didn't point out your mistake for future references, how would you know where you went wrong? How would you know why this person was 5 points ahead of me? I should point out the mistake for you so that you could make the correction for future references, future performances, and future presentations.
Right,
And that does not happen in Trinidad at all.
Right.
So,
one thing we do on Bhoolal Parampara is look at whatever aspect of culture we would be exploring, we'll look at a vocabulary from it. So looking at dance, there are certain technical terms that would be in the Hindustani. Could you just enlighten us to a bit of those terms so that even the average person who looks at it would even look out for these things?
you see, for example, if you're doing Bharatanatyam, it is entirely different to Kathak.
Right.
Kathak is standing straight all the time. All the time. There's a lot of footworks and spin. Bharatanatyam, you have to be in a squatting position all the time. And entirely different costume, presentation, music, and all of that put together. How can you stand and say, I'm going to do a piece in Kathak? It has nothing to do with Kathak. You look or you try to imitate somebody, make two spin, ta te te ta ta te te ta ta te te ta ta te, and you say in Kathak. And then you go there and do takadimi takadun takadimi takajun, and you call that Bharatanatyam. Who fooling who? And who, none the wiser. And then you have a panel of judges judging that.
Right.
And you couldn't make a comment. How can you use the word Bharatanatyam or Kathak or Kuchipudi or Orisi And the music is not the thing, the costume is not so, your presentation is not, and then you hear 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is where we have to do this, where I don't know. I would suggest to these people to contact those people who are trained, and if you like that practice, to go and do that. There are a lot, but you cannot learn to dance from the film, and you cannot learn to dance from a book. Don't be fooled. This is a practical, physical thing that you have to come and take physical training. And like we were discussing, you have dimensions of dance. You could do it for physical education, you could do it for artistic reasons, and you can do it for cultural reasons. You could just do it because you love the art, but you don't want to perform publicly, so you don't have to go public. But you will know about the art form, you love the movements, and you go and learn it. The classical dance especially, it's a highly disciplined art form like ballet. Highly disciplined. And anybody who is involved in drama and dance and this sort of thing, if you notice, they're very disciplined people. But who is to tell who what? Because everybody wants to learn to dance in one evening, while you take years and you are still training. You want to learn to dance one evening. So you imitate, and then you have the accompaniment of the chutney singers. A man is singing his chutney there, and you have 5 or 6 dancers distracting behind doing this, and you're calling it dance too. And you wonder who is to do what, or what the whole thing is all about. And I think on the final analysis, I see all of this being a highly motivated commerce. This is a business. This is not culture, because Doc, nobody in the world, nobody in this world was born with a culture. Culture was and is provided to you by your environment. Nobody was born. And within culture you have dimensions, science, technology, family, religion, ameliorative. I mean, and you could go down the line. Art mirrors the society. Art is not culture. Art mirrors the society, and people, and whenever we use that word culture in Trinidad and Tobago, 99.9% of the time, that word is only used when we are referring to the performing arts. And that is very sad, very sad. We forget the nice, beautiful thing happening. There we go, wait for me. Namaskar, Sitaram, how are you? Can I help you? You've been very kind. Please have a seat. What about all of that? Where's the basic value system? So we have been, so much emphasis has been placed on the performing arts and calling it culture. Festival is festival. Diwali is a festival. So after that night, what happens? We have no more culture. After Carnival, Monday and Tuesday, we have no more culture. So we are misinterpreting the whole thing. We put in festival with the arts, and arts with creativity, and this sort of thing.
So basically we call just the actual date we look at for a festival celebration culture. When culture is more than that, it goes
Plenty more than that.
Preparation into even that one date. One thing in just my research in dance itself, especially Indian dance, they speak about the rasas. And there are 9 rasas, I think, is Navaras. I see it not only in dance but in drama. Could you elaborate on those a bit? Because I think that's, if you are to appreciate Indian dance, Indian classical dance especially, it will be a good, important.
You're talking about gestures.
Yeah.
You see, and that is you know, Doc, you're asking really nice questions there. If you're going to buy a car, what do you think is the first question I will ask you?
Well, you'll have to ask about the features of the car.
No, first question I will ask you is what kind of car?
Right.
And in conversation, like what is happening here now, we will go down to talk about the color, the make, and the cost if it's a roll-on, roll-off or a brand new car. In dance, it's everyday language.
Yeah.
It's just that we do it accompanied by music.
Right.
So in dance, if I want to say come, I ain't going to say come. I will say come. If I want to say no, no.
Yes.
And there's something called inner expression, inner emotion with an outer expression.
Right.
If you're frightened, if you're sad, if you're shocked, if you're surprised, whatever happened to you will only reflect one part of your body, and that's your eyes. It will not reflect on your costume. It will not reflect in your jewels. It will not reflect in your hand movement or the hairdo. And as I speak about hairdo, that's another important thing there. It is your facial expression, which is bhava.
Right.
Bhava means expression. Raga means melody.
Right.
Tala means rhythm.
Right.
So whatever happened, you're telling the story. This is the beauty of classical, that everything in the classical dance has an interpretation.
Right.
Every meaning, every word has interpretation. That's why we have the hand gestures.
Right.
Pataka, tripataka, adha pataka, katri, a butterfly, the fish, the conch flowers, the conch shell. Is what you don't see that otherwise.
Right.
And this is the point. So you could read the thing going on a stage. You could look at it and read it, but you could only read it if you know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if they announce their presentation for that performance,
Yeah.
so you understand. It's the same thing with a car. You go to buy a car, they'll have to show you all the operation in it for you to understand how to use that machine. So that is so serious. And the dance, this is the beauty of classical Indian dance. It's entirely different to folk. The definition of the word folk is an interpretation or the meaning of that life. It represents the way of life from the state that it comes from. So if we're doing a folk dance from Mayaro, the word folk in the context would tell you about the life in Mayaro, which is coconut,
Right.
which is fish village. So they will show you how they pick the coconut, how they shell the coconut, the art of shelling that coconut and the copra, and the art of the fish with the net and the pulling of the boat. And that is what the interpretation of folk.
Right.
So India have hundreds of folk because of the different states. And all over the world have its folk dances. You have tribal dances, contemporary, creative. And now they're merging. I was in England and I see now they're merging, they take classical Indian dance and merging it with ballet.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful performance to sit and look at. It's like music. If you're a connoisseur of music, you would understand Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, and Mozart. You could take it in. You would love, but you have to love music to understand it and appreciate it. But if you don't love music and you don't understand, you will think it's noise. It's something like that.
Okay, so we take a short break and continue this conversation after the ad.
Hello everyone, I am Krish Anji Tiwari. You may have heard that there are many persons living with diabetes mellitus in Trinidad and Tobago. This condition affects the patient, the family members, the workplace and the state. So I ask, are you diabetic and would like to know what is happening to you? Do you have a challenge managing your blood sugar and need some assistance? Would you like to know what you can do for good diabetes management? Allow me to address these concerns and others as it relates to diabetes management for better health and well-being. Join me on IETV as we use the science of food and research in the understanding of diabetes.
Understanding Diabetes with Krish Anji Tiwari, Mondays at 7 p.m. with repeats on Thursdays at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to this interesting conversation about dance. We usually would go to the theatre looking at dance just for the sake of entertainment, but in today's conversation we actually see it's much deeper than that. Its roots and the story that dance would tell. We're looking at it specifically from the Indian classical dance. You as part of your experience in dance, you did not only, well, you went to India and you were trained, you came back to Trinidad and you started teaching, but you also visited other places in the world. Tell us a bit about those visits and how it opened up your experience to dance in general.
Well, I was privileged, very privileged to travel to many parts. I traveled, performed, and represented Trinidad and Tobago in many parts of the world. And my very first big trip, or the thing which I look and I think my highlight of my life, is when I was selected to go to the Commonwealth Art Festival in England, Commonwealth, where I performed for the Queen in England in the Royal Albert Hall in London. And to me, I think that's one of the highlights of my life. In addition to that, I went to, well, England, America, Canada, Switzerland, Germany, Singapore, Japan, Brazil, and many countries. And it was an experience to go to these countries to witness the other aspect of presentation in dance and looking at similarities. And you realize it's a very small world we are living in. When you get out there, because I remember for the Commonwealth Art Festival, we were there and you had people from all over the Commonwealth performing. And you look at the way they dress. For example, you had the groups from Africa, Sierra Leone, Uganda, Tanzania, and these places. And the girls and them was bare-breasted, performing publicly in London in the Royal Art. But it was their culture.
Right.
It was folk to the fullest. It was the way. And in India too, in certain parts of India, we have that. I have the books on it. The identical way happens. It is their way. It's their tradition. It's their culture. And we couldn't get away from that. So traveling, to me, is probably one of the best experience one can get. And no university can give you a degree for that because of the exposure, the things you would have seen live, to be part of and to share. So in that context, I was very privileged and very lucky to get that opportunity, because I was then, well, of course, I was working in the government service as a cultural officer. I retired after 40 years in the public service as a senior cultural officer. So being the cultural officer, I was sent to many parts of the world as an observation, to observe, take part in seminars, workshops, and to perform also. So that was the kind of privilege I had. And, I should mention this, I think. My scholarship, which was given to me, was by the Indian government, the ICCR, Indian Cultural for Cultural Relation. But the man responsible for that scholarship was the late Mr. Kamaluddin Mohammed. He was the man responsible for that scholarship. Not only for me, but for the late Harry Mahabir, who was the leader of the National Indian Orchestra, plays the accordion, and Aziz Khan, who was Guyanese, who was married to a Trinidad girl, for the three of us to go and well, Harry did music, Aziz Khan did vocal, and I did the dancing. Well, my two friends left and gone, so I would be the next one to go and meet them. So when you put it all together, traveling experience is an experience that you have to be privileged to see for yourself. You go to Haiti right there and you look at what is happening. You go to India, you go to Africa, you go to Germany, and you go to these countries and you look and you see way of life. And then when you come back home here, on this little island with 7.5 people with 3.5 miles square, and the kind of comparison we're trying to make and the life we are living, I don't think people know how lucky we are to be living in this part of the world. We have so many things to say thank you, Lord, for, but I don't think we realize that. You only miss the water when the well runs dry. The tree that bears the fruits don't eat it. The water that runs through the river don't use it. High is an extension of low, but low is the base of high. And in that context, I mean your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, the sacrifices that they have made for us to be where we are today. We speak about the beautiful buildings all over the world. Do you ever hear anybody speaking about the foundation of those buildings? So when we're talking about culture, I really enjoy this. When we're talking about culture, culture has to be defined in the context in which we use that word. Because it's a broad word, it's a broad statement, it is badly misused, misinterpreted, misunderstood.
I want to go, we spoke about travel and being open-minded to learn from that experience. And looking at local performers and local dancers, they do travel. I know some of them travel and perform, but with respect to opening up their minds to what they might experience abroad, you think in any way, apart from, for instance, people going and learning classical dance in India and coming back. Is there that lack of creativity, intuition with experiences that could be had by traveling by our local performers?
That's a beautiful one. Because at present, we are imitating.
Yeah.
100% imitation. Don't let nobody fool anybody with that. Pure imitation. A lot of things that I have been looking at, and I hear choreography and this and that. When I look on the film, I see it on the film and the movies. And here you imitate it and they come and they say choreographed by so and so. That's not true. That is why traveling experience is a different experience. A lot of things that we are doing here today come from abroad here. Every single thing that they are saying, the words that they're using, and everything you're talking about, if you go back and look at the film, you will see it. I am now saying, since they love the dance very much, and this is for the younger generation, we are blessed with that natural inborn talent. We are really blessed with that naturally. They have that potential and the ability to be dancers or singers and musicians, second to none. We have that. But it needs to be cultivated. You cannot build a house on sand. If you go and take some basic training, then you could create, then you could improvise, you could do so many things. Because, like I said, nobody in the world can read or write if they don't know the alphabet. Nobody in this world. From then you start with A, B, C, D, E, and then you start joining words and sentences. Then you start writing, then you write books. It's the same thing with the dance.
Right.
When you have basic, even all right, a lot of people dance to these songs, these local film dancers or Bollywood dancers, because they're beautiful, really nice performances. They dance to this song. Ask any one of them what is the meaning of this song. And then you'll see where mudras come into the picture. You don't know the meaning of the song, but you're just moving from right to left and running across the stage with a big group of 20 or 30 can't fit on the stage. The leader is in the middle, God knows why. What are you doing in the middle of it? Why don't you show what you can do by letting the students perform?
Right.
And then ask the question, whose group is that?
Yeah.
Show your work. You know what are you doing there?
Yeah.
If I go to dance at this age of my life with my student, who do you think they will look at? They will never look at the student. They will look at me. All right, so you want to show the people what you can do, show the people what you can do. But what are you doing? You go with 20 and 30, 50, and are all looking at each other. They're not too sure. Called insecurity. The leader is in the front of that group, dressed in a different costume. What are you really doing? What are we showing? Is that choreography?
And when you speak of the choreography and understanding the Hindustani language to carry that communication in the gesturation and the dance. Now I go back to, for instance, a lot of times we say the national anthem, quote unquote, of Trinidad from is Suhani Raat. And Suhani Raat, even though it might sound to a person who doesn't understand India as something joyous, it actually is something sad, what the poet is expressing. So I think you brought an important point there about understanding whatever song you dance to, what is the meaning?
What is the meaning?
And what is the mood? And what is the orientation? Because remember, you were mentioning off camera about somebody doing a dance, Radha Krishna, with the Taj Mahal in the background.
I will never forget that as long as I live.
Yeah.
I was part of that audience, and I sit there and I was invited to the show, and I went there, and I looked at the show. This group is performing a dance about Radha and Krishna. And you know what was the prop? The prop was the Taj Mahal. I would like anybody to explain that to me. Another time again, I went and I looked at the performance, and this group presented the Ramayana on the stage, big Ramayana, as a prop, and walk across the Ramayana. And nobody noticed that. Who do I tell that to? The promoters, the people who don't care if Sunday fall on a Wednesday. Who do I tell that to? The leader of that group. And then they will say, well, because I'm a professional or because I studied who I feel I am or this and that. But this is the kind of thing that is happening. And if you look at carefully what is happening, you see what is really happening in Trinidad and Tobago. People get away with just about anything. You walk across the Ramayana, And then you had a proper the Taj Mahal and you're portraying Radha and Krishna. Radha and Krishna has nothing to do with the Taj Mahal.
It tells of you have to have the correct orientation on time, space, and time period of the song. Because even if we look at the Bollywood movies, for instance, they always pay attention to that period they would try to portray.
To portray that particular period in history or whatever the case may be.
I remember looking at Padmawat, and Padmawat was during the time of when the Delhi Sultanate was going to be established in India, northern India, and I even noticed that they focused on the vernacular was spoken in Ratan Sen's kingdom as opposed to the Darbar of Aladdin. So to this detail and artistry, I think in Trinidad and Tobago we need to understand that. So it shows even in dance we have to understand what history is, what language is, styles of music and what they represent, because that comes together to tell the story on the stage of the dancer.
Doc, you realize what you were saying there? How may I challenge how many people made that observation you make? But who do I tell that to? Who do you tell that to? And I just mentioned 99.9% of the film dancers imitate.
Yeah.
They imitate all the time without understanding the meaning of the song, so they could portray it in mudras and bhavas.
And it's important to know that this show being Bhoolal, Parampara and Forgotten Traditions, this is what we want to do. I remember in medical school being in Meds and doing the play. And, well, we were the first cohort to introduce Hindi in the plays for the Diwali program. And I remember years after that, I was asked to come to comment. And a lot of times I had to correct even the vocabulary that was used. Because, for instance, in a play which talks about Hindu mythology and you want to use a particular vocabulary, one of the actors was supposed to be a sage, and he was supposed to say, "Be quiet," and he used khamosh. And I said, no, you can't use khamosh. You have to use shant hoja, as opposed to khamosh. And this is my perspective, which I even see in what you say, talking about dance, that there is a lot of basic knowledge that is to be had and learnt by people in Trinidad and Tobago within the performing arts. And it extends within the people of Indian origin and beyond that, what we see on main stage.
You realize you're talking about a certain level there?
Yes.
Life is a process, you know.
Yes.
In that process you have events and levels, and life is the choices that we make. How many people would make that kind of observation? Who discuss it? It is in years today that we're having this kind of discussion. I keep asking myself, where are the reporters? Where are the journalists? How come they're not interviewing people on singing, on music, on dancing, on classical singing, on dholak, on dhantal, and give those people some encouragement so they could continue what they're doing?
And the thing is, and I'm glad you spoke about the media personnel, because when I look at media from Europe or the States, the media person, before they cover a story, would get themselves around with what it is they would
research it.
Exactly, so that when they would now bring a report about it would be very critical.
That's right.
Looking at, again, deficiencies or strengths in whatever they would cover. And this is where Bhoolal Parampara comes again, because a lot of what we see has to do with what the media coverage is. And if the stage is to be said to do what is quote-unquote the orthodox, or from the basis of what it is, then we should challenge even the media to do that sort of professional coverage.
Doc, knowledge is power. It's a word that we use regularly in this country, but it's not a complete statement.
Yeah.
Sad to say, it's not. Knowledge is power only, I repeat, only when applied. Information without experience is nothing. And this is the kind of discussion, and I'm so happy about this program today. And again, I want to thank IETV for this, because this is very informative and very educational. We need more of this kind of program in this country presently, as with special emphasis for the younger generation to have a better understanding, which automatically will bring out a better appreciation. So when they say Sitaram or Namaskar, they will know what it's saying and what it means. So it comes from the heart. When you sing a bhajan and you know the meaning, you sing it with feelings and love, and not just imitating to be a part of a group.
Okay, so I'll just give you a piece of my story and how it would have come into producing something like this, or an ideology of it. Is that I grew up with my grandparents speaking Bhojpuri at home, and I went to university. I availed myself of learning Hindi because I thought that to understand that part of my identity, I should avail myself if it was available. Just like that, there would be young people who, if not in dance at this point, would aspire towards it, or those who are in dance. What is your advice for these people now? They might be looking at Bollywood and say they like how this look. Now, what opportunities are there for them to now look at a profession in dance?
Doc, what we are saying there, I think one of the ways we can start is with probably organizing a series of lectures, demonstration. We can have some meeting with our pundits who have been working very, very hard in this country to keep tight of this culture, and in the wider Caribbean too, the pillar of strength. And we need to, I would personally think that we need to have some meetings with our pundits to let them know how we feel as John public. I have been suggesting over the years to let what is happening there be interactive, so hold the interest of the younger generation. Let it be interactive. And for example, I suggest that, all right, you have a Ramayana for 9 nights, 7 nights, 5 nights. If you take 15 minutes out of that and allow an interactive session out of that at the end or before or something, have an interactive session in which they allow the people to ask questions, but the questions must relate within the context of what is happening, not outside the box. And if you're ashamed, and our people is ashamed to hold a microphone and ask, they think they might ask the wrong question, or they might be embarrassed, then don't ask it. Write the question on a piece of paper, in block letters, send it with a child and put it in a thali. Let the pundit answer the question, and let it relate and start. I have been suggesting this for years. Try to do what we are doing interactive. I mean, there's so many observations that make. We say 7 to 9, God bless. The 7 to 9 never start 7, it never finish 9. Is another thing. So geographically, you're coming from Faizabad to Port of Spain, 12 hours of your time gone for actual 19 minutes of Qatar, which means a story. A lot of people, you know, ask the average child, what is the meaning of the word bhajan? Ask the average Hindu, what does it mean of the word kata? What does it mean of the word chaupai? What does it mean of the word doha? And then you will understand better where I'm coming from. But we are yet doing it, and the poor pundits who have been sacrificing night upon night, thinking for consideration that they understand what they're doing. So the time has come for you to ask, do you understand what we are doing? Is there anything you'd like to see us do? Is there anything you'd like to see us change? Are you, you know, see and get that feedback from them. Why are we losing the younger generation? We should start questioning that. The problem is not why you put on weight, you know. It's what caused it.
Put on weight. Okay, so we pause for a short break and continue the conversation after that.
MRK Consultants, agent for Presidential Insurance Company Limited, is celebrating 16 years of insurance services. With convenient parking and knowledgeable staff, MRK Consultants are geared to provide all your motor insurance needs, including third-party and comprehensive coverage for all your motor vehicles. Call or visit our office today. MRK Consultants, Chandrahari Building, number 9, Todd Street, El Socorro, 221-5051. Save on your motor insurances. Call MRK today.
Welcome back, and we're here with Dr. Rajkumar Krishnaprasad talking about dance. So, after all this conversation, I think I want to look at basically why the situation the way it is and what we can do. I think that, from my opinion, why we have this mediocrity in dance, whether it be within the Indian expression or even outside that, in general in Trinidad, is that Trinidadians don't look at dance and the performing arts as a profession. And that hasn't driven people to make it the best of what it should be. What are your comments on that, and how we could build on that to now bring it to where we spoke about the vision we have for dance in Trinidad?
You know, that is because the artists in this country, our artists, Indian artists, I think artists across the board, is yet to be given that love, appreciation, and respect for what they have done. That is yet to be given the way we treat our artists. We treat them, by the way, incidentally.
Yeah.
Oh, you know that fella? Yes, he's a singer. You know, he's a dancer. I did Bhoolal, man. And we don't treat them. But when you have your function at your house, you go looking for them. And time to pay them, you find it's too much of money. But you could entertain those people with spending thousands and thousands. But when the man have to come and sing for 5 and 6 hours there, you find it's too much to pay him. And this is the kind of thing. So that respect is yet to be given. When I had my program section, I used to give those artists all the respect in the world for what they have done and the contribution they have made. Like I said again, we are yet to be given that kind of thing for the contribution. They have made invaluable contribution towards the promotion and preservation of Indian art and culture in this country without any recognition. Most of them died in abject poverty. So it has reached to a point now where it's high entertainment value only. And after that, that is it. And if you look carefully, again, imitating the Bollywood style. And who really benefiting? This is an entertainment value system. Nobody is going to sacrifice to take training. They'll say, why? Because you definitely can't live on it. 1 or 2 people could live on it because they're very smart. They're doing it as a business. And the people who are there accompanying don't realize that a lot of them are being used, exploited, and prostituted, and not realizing it. But you will only miss the water when the well run dry. It will be too late for them.
Right.
And all you do is go back, way back, go back 50, 60 years or how much you want, and look what has happened to the Indian artist, the singers, the musician, the dancers, the dholak player, the hunter. Where have they reached? Who respect who? Who care about who?
Right.
How many people invite them to the functions or anything with the exception that they want them to perform?
I want to look at this last point now that we wrap up, is what is the role of NGOs like National Council for Indian Culture, the Emancipation Support Committee? What are their roles now in trying to improve that art form?
Well, the National Council for NCIC is doing something that, I mean, is unbelievable, because thank God that we have that organization or association, because as a result of that existence, they are bringing the artists forward. They're getting them to come forward, identify themselves, and get involved in what is happening. Because if it wasn't for that forum, where are they going? Where are they going? Because they couldn't get a better stage than the NCIC. You couldn't get a better setting and environment and lighting. And so where else are they going? So that become an opportunity for them. But what happens after that? It's the same thing with the Bal Vikas program. You have these what happened after they leave school? Where is the follow through? Where is the institution? Who is the one to continue teaching them? Where is the class? Where is the teacher? What happens? Same thing with the Hindi. If a little more emphasis would be placed in our temples, in which you have a captive audience, you have a captive